Singing to Allah, to my Yah, to my Yah. Let the judgment run down like the waters, and the righteousness flow as the streams. Let Yahweh's name be exalted in the high praises of my Elohim. Let the judgment run down like the waters, and the righteousness flow as the streams. Let Yahweh's name be exalted in the high praises of my Elohim. Yo, Yah come in the volume of the book. His word is life, so we got the killers shook. Wisdom was in the chief places from the beginning to enlighten the sons of men. But the fighting among twins ushered in sin, and brothers been beefing ever since. Yah come in the volume of the book by the truth and sell it not. So we got these robbers out here shook. Understanding is departing from evil. He flooded the earth once and there'll be no sequel, but the fire next time. That's why I'm the messenger refined in the fire of affliction, opening your eyes to the foolish ways and the devil's contradictions. Singing to Allah, to my Yah, to my Yah. Let the judgment run down like the waters, and the righteousness flow as the streams. Let Yahweh's name be exalted in the high praises of my Elohim. Let the judgment run down like the waters, and the righteousness flow as the streams. Let Yahweh's name be exalted in the high praises of my Elohim.
I praise John summer and winter season, and dismiss the statues was taught by these heathens. Y'all give me the reason to call them out, only misleading and treasons. A man's heart that was given to these beastlings, no one not even. Back to seeking the heart of Yah. 7 is what he requires for the draw silver to be polished by fire. Constantly led by my Elohim, who visits messengers through visions or a dream. Slaves that were formerly your king will one day rise and seek the purpose of their being. The feeling is serene. The Yisrael is a prince who has power with Elohim and man. And no longer do we advance or realize the reaches of the stars. Upon the shoulder bumper motion coming by Yah, who can take it thus far. Give him YAH'S not salat to the Almighty Yah.
Let the judgment run down like the waters, and the righteousness flow as the streams. Let Yahweh's name be exalted in the high praises of my Elohim. Let the judgment run down like the waters, and the righteousness flow as the streams. Let Yahweh's name be exalted in the high praises of my Elohim. Hallelujah. Singing to Allah, to my Yah, to my Yah.
I'm the messenger, Yah, stepping out of Beulah. From Babylon to Zion, my chains are looser in my mind, but out here the jakes will shoot ya. The judges judge for hire, the juries are straight liars. Just to see Israel fried up, they got our phones tapped and wired up. The police got you stuck, no one desires us. This law requires us to buy this man's trust. Pay to get salvation, who you playing? But I pulled your card, I seen your stars, they false lights. My spirit spit lyrics so cold, your frostbite. And that's the attitude from your murderous plight, from your rapers every night, and young boys shot down in the street in they mama's sight. Your overseers call this the good life, like the hood's right. Rep Zion, that's right. Yah's way, that's life. The ships of Tarshish, the glory of Lebanon will offload to Yah's land. That's what we stepping on. The next plane won't miss the Pentagon. The bees is dying, Florida is drying. Look like death coming to Babylon. The nation about to be born. A pure language giving the call on the name of Yah. All people will serve the sun, the black supremacist. No hippie on the stick, looking like Dennis the Menace. The demon is finished. When the wicked fall, the meek increase. Israel is free. Rejoice in the death of the beast. The resurrection of Yah's people. All your children will be righteous, walking in Yah's likeness, mirth and happiness, all glory in the manifesting Yah's elect.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Praise the mighty Yah. Yah is righteous, Yah is holy, and let Yahweh be magnified. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Welcome to another beautiful broadcast of Nothing But the Truth. I am Mowreh IshYAH, YIsraEL, of the house of Israel, bringing to you nothing but the truth from the house of Israel, Cincinnati, located at 2330 Kemper Lane. And we're here to bring you nothing but the truth of the mighty Yah. And who is this Yah? Yahweh is the creator of the heaven, earth, and sea, and all that therein is. Yahweh is the only judge, the only lawgiver, the only king, the only redeemer, and the only savior of Israel and the world. And Yahweh is the one that has ordained us to bring you his words of truth. And that's what we will do. And today, we're going to continue with a woman in travail, because Yahweh said that his people would be as a woman in travail, like a woman in labor that's bringing forth a baby, her first baby, meaning she's never experienced this kind of pain before. And his people would be like a woman in travail. And as the days go by, after the horrendous acts that have took place this week against our people, you could see that we are travailing, that we are suffering, that we are crying, and that we are mourning. And the Almighty let us know that he will do a thing in the earth, that he will bring forth his word and he will show forth his message, and he will use his servant to allow it to come about. I want you to go to the book of Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter. And this woman in travail, Yahweh said, Israel will be as a woman in travail. And who are these people? Who are these people that are suffering? Who are these people that are in travail, that are dying? Who are these people that are being murdered and left to be dead on the streets and treated less than a dog? Who are these people that are being eliminated today? Have you seen the reaction in this world and the behavior of the people when it is about your lives, black man and woman? The world came to a screeching halt back in March 11th. The NBA announced they would postpone the remainder of their season. And then all the sports closed. And then all the schools closed. And all the businesses closed. They called home all the foreign travelers. They called home everybody. They called home all the cruise ships. They called home all the international travelers. School ended. Sports ended. Restaurants ended. Because they were afraid of the world dying as a result of the pestilence that Yahweh put upon the earth. He made the world quarantine themselves for 40 days. And as soon as the statistics showed that the people that were dying and being affected at a rate above everyone else, they were black people. Not just any black people, because it's not like this is what's happening throughout the face of the world in Africa, but in Europe and in all the nations in lands where your people have been scattered due to the transatlantic slave trade. You're dying at an astronomical rate from COVID-19. When that information was publicized, the white racists, including the white racist president, decided that this country and the world needs to open back up. Even though the calls and the cries and the stories of horror were going forth of how ill and how horrendous black people were being treated in the hospitals and still are being treated. This was a horror story. But it wasn't horrible enough for them to remain closed to say, let's keep everybody safe. No, because the people that's getting sick and dying at the highest rate is just some niggas. So we can go ahead and do what we got to do. It's just black people dying. And amidst this, and things that got pushed under the rug that didn't hit the news, was things like our brother who got murdered by a white racist Klans people in February. This story got pushed under the rug. They murdered this young man in the middle of the street in broad daylight. They murdered him. And they did not get arrested for over a month. They didn't actually get arrested for over 2 months. Until the video went global and there was an outcry for their arrest. But if nobody would have ever publicized the video, these white racist lynching mob would have went without charges. In the course of this pandemic, when everything on the news was the pandemic, in Kentucky, the police ran up in a woman's house, a nurse, a frontline warrior worker, a hero, but she was black. Plainclothes police officers ran up in this woman's house, unannounced, no knock warrant, and it was the wrong house. Guns drawn, aggressive, and this woman's husband feared for his life and his wife's life, did what anybody would have done if somebody run up in your house with firearms and you have one in your house. You start shooting. And he did. And he got one. But they shot back and murdered his wife and arrested him and charged him with attempted murder, kidnapping, and they threw the book at him. On the spot. It didn't take 3 days. It didn't take 4 days. They did it that night. This happened in March in Kentucky. And then, just 4 days ago, in the evening hours, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the third largest metropolitan area in the Midwest. And yes, that 3 is going to be important. The third largest metropolitan area in the Midwest. First is Chicago, of course. But this is the third largest. On 38th Street in Minneapolis, and 38 is the order of 3. They took a brother out of his car because he allegedly used a counterfeit bill. Did he know it was counterfeit? We'll never know. We will never know if he was trying to scam this store. And from what we know of this man, he probably didn't know. How many times have you exchanged money with someone
Do you know if they gave you counterfeit money or not? Does the store know how many times? It's quite very possible he had no idea it was counterfeit. And even if he knew, is it worth his life? But nevertheless, they called the police. The police came, pulled this man out of his car, and he didn't resist. Sat him down on the ground, and he didn't resist. Brought him over to their police car, and he did not resist. But yet, he ended up on the ground, face down in handcuffs. And the famous video we saw was this one police officer whose name escapes me. He's a white racist. And you saw how he murdered him before the entire world. Murdered him. Murdered him. But it wasn't just him, because other video footage will show you that there were 3 more police officers involved in this slaughter, in this lynching, in this execution. 2 officers were with the other who had his knee placed on his neck that suffocated him. 2 other officers, so that means 3 officers were holding him down. He couldn't move his midsection, he couldn't move his lower limbs, and he could not move his head properly because he was being suffocated. And they murdered him on live video. And they murdered him Monday night. And they murdered this man, and they took this man's life. And 3 days later, the prosecutor, the mayor, the cops, and whoever else did not announce charges, nor did they not announce arrest for any of these police officers. So what happened in the 3rd night of protest, in the 3rd night of looting and rioting, in the 3rd night of uprising in Minneapolis, the people burnt down the police precinct. And it was the 3rd precinct. They burnt it down. Now we know, if you got any sense, it don't serve you no good to go start burning down buildings. And I would always say, why are they always burning down their own stores? Why don't they just go burn down the people's buildings that actually did this thing? And somebody finally got a clue. That don't mean it's good. Because, of course, they burnt down this precinct, and the state troopers and the National Guard came onto the streets. And now you have an even more volatile situation. But then finally, earlier today, the prosecutor in Minneapolis, Minnesota, went forth and they announced that they have arrested this Jake. They arrested him. And they charged him. And wouldn't you know, they charged him with 3rd-degree murder and manslaughter. But there's still 3 more police officers that haven't been charged or arrested. But George Floyd's support system is one of an unexpected, resourceful man. Steven Jackson, former NBA player, last team he played with was the San Antonio Spurs, and his jersey number was 3. And he's not a scared Negro. And he went forth and let the people know that this was a good man and that they were not going to keep silent about this. And his jersey number is number 3. So why is it significant that in this time, all these situations have a common stream, and it happens to be the number 3? Well, let me show you what Yahweh said in the book of Genesis. I know I said Deuteronomy, but hold that and go to Genesis, the 1st chapter. Because this woman in travail, and this is the 3rd part of the woman in travail, this woman in travail represents Yahweh's servant on earth. And look what the Creator said in Genesis, the 1st chapter, the 14th verse. And Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Yes, these lights are for signs. And these lights, which includes the sun, indicates the day. And so when these lights are ordered, like on the 3rd day, this order, what we call the order of 3, is representative of something. And what does it represent? It represents something being done in the earth, because on the 3rd day, the earth was made. The earth was made on the 3rd day. And Yahweh did something with this 3rd. He said he's going to use these things for signs. And then look in the book of Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter. And I need you to realize and understand that the only people that can even bring you this wisdom are those that are seeking after Yah. Seeing the word of Yah. Because this is literally the only book that speaks about your condition. And this book will speak about your condition on every level, from the practical to the impractical, to the physical, to the metaphysical, to the spiritual, and to the higher echelons of spiritual knowledge. I don't care where you take the word of Yah. In any center of wisdom, this will let you know what's going on directly with black man and woman in this world. Especially the black man and woman that is victims and ancestors and descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Real black men that walked this earth and that left a mark on this earth in righteousness. Your ancestors, and you are the enemy of wickedness. But wickedness is in rulership today. So you are public enemy number 1. And in Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, verse 33, the Creator let us know, did ever a people hear the voice of Elohim speaking out of the midst of the fire, as thou hast heard and lived? Or hath Elohim attempted to go and take him a nation from the midst of another nation? All this talk about we need to do this, that, and the third. But what we need to do is recognize that Yah is the one that can take this nation of ours out of the midst of this nation that has oppressed us. You can't deliver yourself in this manner. You don't have enough guns, enough bullets, enough missile launchers, enough cannons, enough grenade launchers. You don't have enough ammunition, enough money to fight this beast. But you do have the Creator. And he made the smith that blows the weapon. Therefore, you don't even need a gun. You don't need a grenade launcher. All you need is the Creator. But then he'll let you know, get the gat, get the sword, get the knife, because I might need you to shoot and slice. But believe me, when Yahweh tell you to shoot and when Yahweh tell you to slice, it ain't even going to be no leg work in it. He's just going to tell you where to shoot, where to slice. You ain't even going to need to know martial arts. Just let the hammer drop. Take care of business. He said he delivers this nation from the midst of another nation by temptations. Meaning what? He tested in judgment this earth to see if they would have any compassion on the children of Israel. He tested in judgment you to see if you would consider where this affliction may be coming from. He has tempted to give you a test in judgment to see if you would acknowledge him. And the world failed. Israel failed. And so Yahweh will move forward with delivering this nation from the midst of another nation by temptations and by signs. And this is what I'm going to show you. The signs that let us know that what Yahweh has done in these last 3 months, what Yahweh is doing in this 3rd month of his calendar, which is today. And today is the 3rd day of the 3rd month. And this 3rd month began on the 3rd day of the week. And what Yahweh is doing right now is signs to show you who is in control. He's not done bringing forth signs. This is literally just the beginning of these signs. The sign of the 3rd is Yah's servant on earth. Let me show you the book of Genesis, the 15th chapter. Who else? Just to make mention, because I forgot to mention, not only has these people, our family, Ahmaud Arbery, the sister in Kentucky whose name escapes me, and George Floyd, our family, not only have they been murdered by the police and white racists, when George Floyd was murdered, the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, a Jewish man, he said this has got to stop. 400 years of this treatment has got to stop. He didn't say it one time. He's said it many times. Why in the world would Yahweh make this man acknowledge that this has been going on for 400 years? Why is this atrocity after atrocity happening to the black man and woman in America during the 400-year commemoration year? Don't you know that's what this year started out as in July? And they started it by their law and decree in July of 2019, but they really kicked it off in August 2019. Various cities and organizations had celebrations and commemorations to acknowledge that this is the 400th year of black people in America. They had reparation conference and congressional hearings on reparations. And they have a law that said from July 2019 to July 2020, they will commemorate the 400th year of black people in America. Where in the world do they get 400 years from? Who talks about that? Does the Quran mention 400 years? Does the New Testament mention 400 years? Does the Netu Netter mention 400 years? Do the Emerald Tablets mention 400 years? Does the Gilgamesh mention 400 years? Does the Tao Te Ching mention 400 years? Does the Kebra Nagast mention 400 years? None of these books mention 400 years. None of the walls in Egypt mention 400 years. Only one book told you would be in captivity, enslaved, oppressed for 400 years. Only one book talked about your plight before it even happened, and now your oppressors confirmed it. And that is the book of Yah. Genesis, the 15th chapter, the 13th through the 15th verse lets you know that you would be in a land that is not yours, a stranger and a servant, and be afflicted for 400 years. And this is what this mayor said. This has been going on for 400 years. And it gotta stop. Well, in the book of Genesis, the 15th chapter, verse 6 reads, and it says, and he, Abram, believed Yah, and he counted it to him for righteousness. And he said unto him, I am Yah, that brought thee out of out of the Chaldees, to give you this land and to inherit it. And he said, Yah Elohim, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, take me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove and a young pigeon. Why did he have Abram take these animals of 3 years old when, if you read about how Yahweh ordered the priests to present offerings, all the animals usually had to be in their first year? But he had Abram take it of 3 years old because it was a sign that he was dealing with his servant in the earth. But even look in the book of Genesis, the 22nd chapter, because I'm showing you this sign of this third. As I mentioned, the best friend of George Floyd, Steven Jackson, former NBA player with the San Antonio Spurs, his jersey number is number 3. And on the third day of the month, he stood in front of the world on national television, letting the people know it's time to take action. And his jersey number is number 3. The third police precinct in Minneapolis was burnt to the crisp on the third night of protest, 3 days after they murdered our brother, the third precinct. He got murdered on 38th Street, which in the order of sevens puts it in the order of 3. 3 police officers held him down, and this happened in the third largest metropolitan area of the Midwest. This is not make-believe. Yahweh is real, and so is his word. And he's doing this because a woman is in travail. And the woman in travail is the servant of Yah, Israel. Black man and woman, you are his servant who is travailing today. And he's trying, and he is waking you up. And in the book of Genesis, the 22nd chapter, verse 1 reads, "And it came to pass after these things that Elohim did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and cleaved the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went unto the place of which Elohim told him. Then on the third day," why the third day? Why? Because he is establishing Abraham as his servant. And that's who Abraham was. On the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. On the third day. Because why? Because this was his servant. And what does the third represent? It represents Yahweh's servant in the earth. Look in the book of Genesis, the 29th chapter. But there's something else this third represents. There's something else this third represents in Yahweh's word. There's another or a secondary definition for the third. And it has to deal with separation. Yahweh's servant in the earth is holy. That's why the 10th or the tithe is holy. That's why the Sabbath day occurred 3 days after the beginning of the month, because it's holy. That's why there is 3 things Yahweh did on the Sabbath day. He sanctified it, which means he made it holy. He rested, and he blessed it, because this is a holy day. And the third represents being, or the act of separation, separation. And it usually is separated through some kind of sacrifice. There's a sacrifice that goes with this separation. Why else did Abraham have to get 3-year-old animals to sacrifice? Why else did it take 3 days for Yahweh to show Abraham where to sacrifice his son, which he did not sacrifice his son? He sacrificed an animal, but Abraham was being tested. But it was still dealing with a sacrifice. And I'm going to show you this. In Genesis 29, verse 33, it says, "And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, Because Yahweh hath heard that I was hated, and hath therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Shimeon." This is her second son. But who's her third son? "And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, Now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore was his name called Levi." So the children of Levi, what do? They perform the sacrifices, the ritual killings of animals. They do this thing. And in the book of Malachi, the 2nd chapter, we'll see what the Creator said about Levi. In the book of Malachi, chapter 2, it reads in verse 6, "The law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found in his lips. He walked with me in peace and equity, and did turn many away from iniquity. For the priest's lips should keep knowledge, and they should seek the law at his mouth, for he is the messenger of Yahweh of hosts." That's what Levi is. He's his messenger. He's his servant in the earth. The children of Israel is Yahweh's servant in the earth. And just to show you again some more that this third not only represents his servant, but also represents this sacrifice to be separated through sacrifice, to be sanctified through sacrifice. In the book of Genesis, the 40th chapter. Meaning something has to die. Something is being killed. Why else is these things happening the way they are? Over the course of 3 months, 3 people have been murdered. And the unique thing about it is that they either haven't arrested or took way too long to arrest the perpetrators. Showing you how little they care about your life. But they arrested a black reporter for CNN the other day just because he was standing where they didn't want him to. But another reporter who was Caucasian somewhere else in the city that was also somewhere he shouldn't have been, they didn't arrest him. They arrested this reporter before they arrested the murderous police. In Genesis, the 40th chapter, start reading at verse 6. It states, "And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, do not interpretations belong to Elohim? Tell me them, I pray thee. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph. And he said unto him, in my dream, behold, a vine was before me. And in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blossom shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth the ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said unto him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Why 3 days? Why is this Joseph able to interpret something, and the first thing you see him doing is talking about the number 3? Why? Because he's Yahweh's servant. Or 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head and restore thee to thy place. And thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand after the former manner when thou wast his butler. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there was all manner of baked meats. For Pharaoh and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head. And Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation thereof. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Again, this 3 days. This 3 indicative of Yah's servant. It's a sign. Because Yahweh did something in the earth, which is what he created on the 3rd day, the earth. Yet within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and birds shall eat thy flesh from off thee. See, this 3rd also deals with something or someone being separated through some manner of sacrifice. And what am I showing you and telling you and letting you know is that in the 3rd month, the 3rd precinct on the 3rd day burnt down, and then they charged the police that put his knee in the neck of our brother with 3rd-degree murder. Yahweh wants you to know this is going on for this woman in travail, for his servant, which is you. You are the servant of the Creator. In the book of Isaiah, the 43rd chapter, we'll start reading in verse 1. But now, thus saith Yahweh that created thee, O Yaakov, and he that formed thee, O YIsraEL, fear not. And that's what number 3 from the San Antonio Spurs said. He said, I'm not afraid. And you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. Not of this devil, of this beast, not of this enemy that has been slaughtering you. You shouldn't be afraid of him. You should be afraid of Yahweh. But he's letting you know, fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by thy name. Thou art mine. Yeah, we belong to Yah. And he's showing you how. When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee. When thou walk through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee. For I am Yah, your Elohim, the Holy One of Israel, thy Savior. I gave Egypt for thy ransom, and Cush and Sheba for thee. Since thou wast precious in my sight, thou hast been honorable, and I have loved thee. Therefore will I give men for thee, and people for thy life. Why you think Yahweh is taking people down? Why you think Yahweh is bringing people down? He's doing it for you. In the same chapter, keep reading verse 5. Fear not, for I am with you. I will bring thy seed from the east and gather thee from the west. And in verse 10, Yahweh says, you are my witnesses. Why else am I sitting here, standing here, speaking this word today? Because it is our obligation to witness unto what Yahweh has done. Everybody want to be a witness for their oppressor's system. You want to witness for your politicians. You want to witness for your councilmen. You want to witness for your false religions. But who witnessing for Yahweh? Who's speaking the word of Yahweh? You want to be a false witness and a witness of scorning and a witness of lying and a witness of slanders? But who want to be a witness for the Most High? To witness that the things that he is doing is for your enlightenment, for your awakening, for your deliverance. Ye are my witnesses, saith Yahweh, and my servant, whom I have chosen, that ye may know. He wants you to know by letting you see. It's not a coincidence that this man died on 38th Street, and that's the order of 3. There's only 7 numbers, foundational numbers, 1 through 7. After that, it only starts to repeat itself. So 8 is 1, 9 is 2, 10 is 3, and so on and so forth. And 38 is the order of 3. 38th Street. 3 cops held him down. And this 3rd precinct is where these police came from. And in the 3rd night of protesting, 3 days after they murdered this man, they burnt it. And today, they charged the 1 police officer with 3 still needing to be charged and arrested with 3rd-degree murder. And why? Because this is a sign for Yahweh's servant, that you may know, and once you know, now you can believe. I don't want to hear nothing about believing and you don't know a thing. That's what the New Testament wants you to do. That's what the Quran wants you to do. That's what every other false religion and lying politician wants you to do, is believe without knowledge. But Yahweh said know first, and then you can believe. And then you can understand that I am he. Before me there was no Elohim form, neither shall there be after me. Even I am Yahweh, and besides me there is no Christ coming to save us from this pandemic. There is no Muhammad coming to save us from this slaughter. There is no Mahdi coming to save you from this pestilence. There is no knowledge of self coming to save you. Only Yahweh is the Savior. And you are his servant. And if you like it or not, if you acknowledge it or not, he's going to continue to bang upside your head his signs, letting you know this ain't from nobody but him. This woman is in travail because of him. Let me show you what it says in the book of 1 Chronicles. th chapter. th chapter. Look what it says here. We're going to start reading in verse 7 because I want to expedite. And what we're going to read about is the punishments that Yahweh offered David because of his decision to number the people. Yes, Yahweh don't want you to number yourself. He don't want Israel to number themselves. That's why the census that they spit out every 10 years, we, the children of Israel, do not acknowledge it. You're not to number Israel because Yahweh said you will be more than the sand of the sea, more than the stars of the heaven, which cannot be numbered. But they want to know the number. But Yahweh said, don't do that. But David did it. And look what Yahweh said. And Elohim was displeased with this thing. Therefore he smote Israel. And David said unto Elohim, I have sinned greatly, because I have done this thing. But now I beseech thee, do away the iniquity of thy servant, for I have done very foolishly. And Yahweh spoke unto Gad, David's seer, saying, Go and tell David, saying, Thus saith Yahweh, I offer you 3 things. Why 3 things? Choose thee one of them, that I may do it unto thee. So Gad came to David and said unto him, Thus saith Yahweh, choose thee either 3 years. Why 3? Either 3 years of famine, or 3 months to be destroyed. Why 3 months? Before thy foes, while that the sword of thine enemies overtaketh thee. Or else 3 days. Why 3? The sword of Yahweh, even the pestilence, in the land, and the angel of Yah destroying throughout all the coast of Israel. Now therefore advise thyself what word I shall bring again to him that sent me. And David said unto Gad, I am in great strait. Let me fall now in the hand of Yah, for very great are his mercies. But let me not fall into the hand of man. So Yahweh sent pestilence upon Israel, and there fell of Israel 70,000 men. And Elohim sent an angel unto Jerusalem to destroy it. And as he was destroying, Yah beheld, and he repented him of the evil, and said to the angel that destroyed, It is enough. Stay now thy hand. And the angel of Yahweh stood by the threshing floor of Ornan, the Jebusite. So 3 days Yahweh destroyed people. You see, this 3, somebody got to die. And that's what's going on. And David chose these 3 days because he knew that dealing with Yah, there's mercy. He didn't want no 3 years of famine where he would become vulnerable to his enemies, or 3 months of having his enemies chase him down. No, he didn't want to fall into the hands of man. He said, let me fall into the hands of Yah. And we should be acknowledging Yahweh. We should be acknowledging the creator of the heaven, earth, and sea and all that therein is. Because he's the one that's done this to us. There is nothing you can do to get out of this plight. You can't run to any corner of the world or the earth or this country. There's nowhere you can go. There's no political position you can take. There's no political representative you can stand behind. There's no organization you can stand behind that will deliver you from this situation you're in, which is Yahweh is delivering you, and he has to judge not only you but the world. But he is doing a thing now to show you this is from him. And he's allowing his messengers to bring forth the word that shows you his signs. And today this sign is the third. Not to mention we're in the 3rd month. But let me show you something else. In the book of Daniel, the 10th chapter. And we're going to begin reading in the first verse. Daniel, the 10th chapter. In the 3rd year of Cyrus. Why the 3rd year? King of Persia. A thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belshazzar. And the thing was true, but the time appointed was long. And he understood the thing and had understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. Why 3? I ate no pleasant bread, neither came flesh nor wine in my mouth. Neither did I anoint myself at all, till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. And let me tell you, Yahweh inspired his servants to take up this same fast of mourning, this same sacrifice of mourning, in the last 3 weeks of the 2nd month of Yah's year. We of the house of Israel of Cincinnati mourned 3 weeks for all the death and suffering of our people and the world. 3 weeks of mourning. And not so much a single day after our mourning was completed, 3 police officers murdered our brother on 38th Street, the 3rd order. From the 3rd precinct, which got burnt up on the 3rd night of protesting after they murdered him. And they charged this cop that had his knee on his neck with 3rd-degree murder. The Creator is trying to show his servant that he is bringing forth this trouble. It's coming to wake you up. It's here to get you woke so you can acknowledge it's Yahweh. You cannot stand before City Hall and before police stations and before streets and call for this justice, and you don't acknowledge Yah, the King and the Creator, the one who does all of this. You want to be saved? Let me tell you. Look what they told you in Daniel, the 8th chapter. In Daniel, the 8th chapter, verse 23 reads, "And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up, and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people." That's you. "And through his policy shall he cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart. And by peace shall he destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand." What does that mean? This man's policy of fake peace, this man's policy that he says is about peace, is nothing but lip service. They just lying to you. They just done made a policy that is policy for us to investigate. And then they gonna arrest them. And then they gonna either acquit them or give them a lesser charge. Like they did Mike Brown's killer. Like they did Trayvon Martin's killer. Like they did Philando Castile's killer. They're not gonna serve proper justice and judgment to the murderers of your people. Because the proper justice, the proper judgment for this Jake that murdered our brother is that he should die. The proper judgment for Philando Castile's murder is he should die. But what happened when Philando Castile was murdered? The police officer went home with his family. What happened when this Jake murdered George Floyd? He went home and had police protection in front of his house, while George Floyd couldn't go home to nobody. So are they dying? This Jake crooked cop or investigator, retired investigator that murdered Ahmaud Arbery was home, eating, chilling, watching TV for months before they arrested him. That's not proper judgment. That's not proper justice. And you're not going to get it by banging on City Hall's doors, by asking the exact power structure that does not enforce their own policy on their own to now do such a thing. The mayor said, charge this cop, arrest this cop immediately. And they came out against him. The very president of the United States said that this is a weak man. Why? Because they ain't nothing but lip-serving, trash-talking politicians. Yahweh said they just got these policies, and they go and destroy many with this image of peace. But it's not nowhere near peace. Look what it says in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, the 23rd verse. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom were 10 kings, and shall arise, and another shall rise after them. And he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And that's what they did. They changed times. They done changed laws. They done spoke a bunch of crap that don't even hold up in their own courts. They talk just to get you off the street. Then they go kill somebody else. They're not about what they say. They're not going to bring you true justice. But look what Yah said in Isaiah 59. In Isaiah 59, verse 1, behold, Yahweh's hand is not shortened, that it cannot save, neither his ear heavy, that it cannot hear. But your iniquities have separated between you and your Elohim, and your sins have hid his face from you, that he will not hear. For your hands are defiled with blood, and your fingers with iniquity. Your lips have spoken lies. Your tongue hath muttered perverseness. This is what we doing all day in church, all day slandering, all day with the false religions, all day with the comedic sciences, all day in the mosque, all day with the false ideologies and philosophies that hasn't brought us any deliverance. He's saying, you've muttered perverseness. None calleth for justice, even though every time a man or woman gets murdered, we hearing, we want justice. But Yahweh said on the contrary, you ain't calling for justice, because Yahweh don't even call justice what you think justice is. None's calling for righteousness, nor pleadeth for the truth. Why trust in vanity? They trust in vanity and speak lies. They conceive mischief and bring forth iniquity. This is what we've been doing. And he says in verse 8, the way of peace they know not, and there is no judgment in their goings. They have made them crooked paths. Whosoever goeth therein shall not know peace. Therefore is judgment far from us, neither doth justice overtake us. We wait for light, but behold obscurity, for brightness, but we walk in darkness. This is what is going on. This is going on because we not acknowledging the Creator. But Yahweh said that this, look what he said in Jeremiah, the 30th chapter. Verse 5 reads, for thus saith Yahweh, we have heard a voice of trembling, of fear, and not of peace. That's all you've heard this year. Ask ye now and see whether a man doth travail with child. Wherefore do I see every man with his hands on his loins, as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned into paleness. This murder, this state-sanctioned murder, this publicized, world-viewed murder that even had the United Nations condemn the United States police forces, this thing has had the world gripped and people looking with pained faces. Why are all the faces turned into paleness? Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. This is this Jacob's trouble. This is Yahweh's insignia to let you know he is in control. He wants you to wake up. He's doing this so you wake up. But will you take heed to what Yahweh is doing? Last scripture we'll go to is in the book of Hosea, the 3rd chapter, the 6th chapter, excuse me. We'll start reading in the first verse. Come and let us return unto Yahweh, for he hath torn, and he will heal us. He hath smitten, and he will bind us up. After 2 days, and like I told you, in the last 3 weeks of the 2nd month, we fasted from pleasant bread, from wine, from flesh, and we refrained to put oil upon our bodies for 3 entire weeks. In the last 3 weeks of the 2nd month, and not but a day later, after we completed this mourning, they murdered our brother. And now everyone is feeling this mourning. And this happened in the 2nd month. And Yahweh said, after 2 days will he revive us. In the 3rd day. Why the 3rd? Because the Creator is calling his servant. Why the 3rd precinct? Because Yah is calling his servant. Why 3 police officers hold down this man? Because Yah is calling his servant. Why on 38th Street? Because Yah is calling his servant. Why 3rd degree murder? Because Yah is calling his servant. Why 3 days later did they burn down this police building? Because Yah is calling his servant. And in the 3rd day, he will revive us and raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. Then shall we know, if we follow on to know Yahweh, his going forth is prepared as the morning, and he shall come unto us as the rain, as the latter and former rain unto the earth. The Creator is calling his servant, who is what in travail as a woman in travail. I have one more scripture, excuse me. It's in Isaiah 66. But Yah is calling his servant. And in Isaiah 66, we'll start at the 5th verse. Hear the word of Yahweh, ye that tremble at his word. Your brethren that hated you, that cast you out from my name's sake, said, let Yahweh be glorified. But he shall appear to your joy, and they shall be ashamed. A voice of noise from the city, a voice from the temple, a voice of Yahweh that rendereth recompense to his enemies. Before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who have heard such a thing? Who have seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Shall I bring to the birth and not cause to bring forth, saith Yah? Shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb, saith thy Elohim? No, he's going to bring forth. He done called his servant. He will continue to do so. And he's doing it now through signs. He tempted this earth over the course of 40 days to see if you would acknowledge him, have compassion on his people, call on him, return from your evil. But no one passed this test. And now, the things that you see happening and that will happen will be illuminated by his signs. And it's starting with this third in the calling of his servant, because we are his people that are in travail. And until tomorrow, Yahweh loves you very much, and so do I. Shalom.
I long for his spirit. I yearn
90 seconds.
his spirit. I long for his spirit. I yearn for the spirit of Yah. All I need, the spirit of Yah. All I breathe, the spirit
60 seconds.
Can't you see the spirit of Yah? Wanna be in the spirit of Yah. I long for his spirit. I yearn for his spirit. I long for his spirit. I yearn for the spirit of Yah. All I need, the spirit of Yah. All I breathe,
10 seconds.
spirit of Yah. Can't you see the spirit of Yah? Wanna be in the spirit of Yah. I long for his spirit. I yearn for his spirit. I long for his spirit. I yearn for the spirit of Yah. All I need, the spirit of Yah. All I breathe, the spirit of Yah. Can't you see the spirit of Yah? Wanna be in the spirit of Yah. Put my Benye and Da'ath at night. Counsel to fear Yah and adore his light. These are the the spirits we need in our life to walk uprightly, be pleased in His sight. I long for His Spirit. I yearn for His Spirit. I long for His Spirit. I yearn for the Spirit of Yah. All I need, the Spirit of Yah. All I breathe, the Spirit of Yah. Can't you see the Spirit of Yah? Wanna be in the Spirit of Yah. I long for His Spirit. I yearn for His Spirit. I long for His Spirit. I yearn for the Spirit of Yah. All I need, the Spirit of Yah. All I breathe, the Spirit of Yah. Can't you see the Spirit of Yah? Wanna be